What's up, guys? It's Eventon here, and so today we're going to be talking about alt accounts. I do actually have a couple alt accounts myself that I do use for various different reasons, and I understand this can be a kind of a contentious topic for some people, saying that people that are running lots of alt accounts or multi-boxing a lot of accounts are kind of ruining the EVE Online experience when it comes to the economy, or using alt accounts to basically replace other players and content, things like that. To be honest, it is what it is, but at the end of the day, you can't really stop people from making alt accounts. But this is why I'm making this video, because I will admit, I mean, there's also kind of the counterpoint too that, for certain kind of gameplay styles and things like that, trust is honestly a big issue with the thing like EVE Online, with it being a sandbox MMO. There's a lot of backstabbing and betrayal going on, and sometimes you don't want to bother people with certain types of gameplay or help and things like that. So it can be bothersome, and so occasionally you are better off just creating an alt account, because it basically has no other free will than your own, and it does open up a lot of possibilities. I will say this is not basically an analysis of like how to min-max your alts, or like what's the best setup and how to plex your alt, things like that. This video is strictly just what roles can an alt play in conjunction, maybe alongside your main as well. All that min-maxing stuff is for another video I do have planned for down the road. So we'll go ahead and get into it, but I do have three things I want to preference. First off, you do not need an alt to enjoy the game or be competitive. I know lots of people that have played EVE Online for 5, 10 plus years and still play the game perfectly fine, and they're happy and just as competitive as the next person with a lot of alts. It just opens up more possibilities if you run alts, but that's pretty much it. The second thing is, I guess it really depends on your personality. I know some people give the advice of, hey, if you're starting EVE Online, you might as well make 2 or 3 different accounts, because a lot of content in EVE is time gated. So if you want to be a miner, it will take you weeks or sometimes months to scale up to a certain point where you want to mine efficiently. Same thing with exploration or running missions. All that stuff takes time. And so if you are a fast learner, you have a ton of experience in MMOs, and you really want to experience everything EVE has to offer in a short amount of time, sure, go ahead and make multiple accounts focusing on different areas. But if you do want to take things slow and really understand EVE Online in its entirety and just focus on one account, you can do that as well. So this isn't saying, hey, go ahead and make 27 alts, but this is also not saying that you have to make them either. The last thing is, of course, there's no replacement for player-to-player interaction. I mean, alts, at least in my opinion, shouldn't be used to replace players. Even though I do have alts that can fulfill certain roles, occasionally I do ask other players for help, or I do pay them to fulfill certain tasks like hauling and things like that. So you can't replace the player-to-player interaction, because that is basically the core of EVE Online. And really, alt accounts, at least in my opinion, how I utilize them is just to supplement my main as well. So we'll go ahead and jump into the roles that your alt accounts can fill for you. All right, and for these first group of roles, I will say these are probably the most common and like the easiest ones to skill into. So these aren't in any kind of particular order, but there are some roles that I will mention a little bit later in the video that are a bit more difficult and more nuanced. So the first one we're going to be covering is the Salvager. I mean, this one's the most straightforward. Essentially, you have an alt account that is trailing behind your main, and while your main is running level 4 missions or any kind of content that is wrecking a lot of ships and leaving wrecks behind, basically you keep going on and keep destroying ships while your alt account falls behind and loots the wrecks as well as salvage them as well. So for the longest time, and in this video, I'm using a catalyst, but I actually found a better fit, which is on the Cormorant. So it actually has a few things in favor. One, it has a bigger CPU yield than the catalyst, so it can actually fit more salvagers, and it has a bit more leeway with the fit. The second thing is it actually moves faster than the catalyst. And the third reason is it's actually cheaper than the catalyst. So, and after I found this fit, I'm actually never using the catalyst again as a salvager. There's no need, in my opinion, to use a Noctis, although that is the most efficient, but there is a lot of upfront costs and scaling for that. Pretty much anybody can get into a Cormorant pretty quickly and throw on some T1 salvagers and make some ISK on the side. And for the next role, we're going to be looking at the Scout. This is actually the very first role that my alt account played. So my main was doing a lot of hauling, and I got to the point where I was hauling some pretty expensive cargo, things that were north of $1 billion. And when I started going through places like Losec or sometimes even Triglaven and Edencom systems, I wanted to make sure I had a ship ahead of me to make sure that the coast was clear. So I made an alt account, got into Synesis, and I just used that a lot of the time to make sure that the system ahead of me was clear for my hauler to go through. So ships like the Synesis, if you have high enough skills, you can use an interceptor, maybe a cloaky ship, But honestly, all that stuff isn't necessarily needed. You can pretty much use anything that's expendable and quick. I mean, heck, you can even use a venture just because it's so cheap and it has a warp stabilizer. It's quick. And if it dies, I mean, you're only out 500,000 ISK rather than a deep space transport that's hauling 1 billion ISK worth of stuff in the cargo hold. All right, and the third role that one of your alts can fill, which is a trade and market alt. Some people go all out and they actually make an alt for every single one of the major trade hubs and really skill up their market skills. So they have one in Jita, and Heck, and Rens, and Amar, as well as Dodixie. And this is a really good way to basically have eyes and ears in all of the major markets. So whether you are trying to buy things, sell things, or if you're trying to snipe something that is on a contract that maybe somebody undervalued and you just need somebody there to do it, because it's actually much quicker to have your main account just send your alt ISK just enough to be able to acquire that product that might be underpriced or something that's on the contract, rather than actually getting in your main account and having them travel anywhere between 10 to 20 jumps to get in that region to buy the item. So if you really enjoy market and trading, this is a great way to make some extra ISK and be able to get some really, really good deals that are in different regions in New Eden. And for the next one, a lot of people have PI alts, and even this next one is a bit of a reach. I kind of lumped it together, which is Project Discovery. Technically, each character is independent with Project Discovery, so it is a way to make some extra ISK, I guess, if you're really bored in AFK. But at least for planetary interaction, to be honest, I haven't done any of it myself. I haven't set up a planet or anything like that. There are tons of videos and guides on it online. I really haven't started it because I know there's a lot of upfront time and cost involved, as well as skilling. And right now, the PI market and a lot of the materials you create aren't doing too well right now on the market. So it's something I haven't really bothered with. But it is something that is something you can completely do with any and all of your characters. And honestly, it is free ISK, but it just takes a lot of time up front to get it started. And the fifth role your alt account can fill in, which is an explorer / scanner alt. So sometimes there actually is a need to have an alt with high scanning skills, whether for combat anomalies for your main, or whether you're trying to scan other ships down for, let's say, nefarious reasons for your main account, let's say. There is a situation for that. But in this case, I actually turned my alt account into an explorer because I heard how lucrative it was. And I actually ended up having a ton of fun and making a lot of ISK doing exploration, especially since you can actually make a lot of money with a very low skill character and a very, very cheap ship. So I actually have no regrets doing that, and I actually highly encourage it if someone is just focused on combat and they want something that's a bit more slow pace and paranoid, and you'll definitely learn how to descan after doing exploration for a while. And the next role one of your alt accounts can fill, which is probably the most commonly heard one, which is a mining alt. All of my alts actually have the capability of mining, but I don't strictly use them for that reason. Occasionally, like once or twice a month, I do log into all of my alts with my Orca. We do a nice big fleet mining operation because honestly, mining is my guilty pleasure. But like I mentioned before, I'm not using it to replace other players. So I actually do invite other players and encourage newbies to occasionally join me as well, so they can kind of get in the action and really get the feeling of what it's like to be in a large fleet operation with like 4 to 5 other ships at least. And it's a really cool and immersive experience, and I love doing it with new bros as well. And it's a nice way to make some extra ISK, especially since the more ships that you have and you're running alongside a fleet boost, you exponentially get more yield and more ISK per hour doing it that way. So mining alt is probably the most commonly heard way. It's not the best like ISK per hour or anything like that, but if you're doing it, you might as well do it as well. Okay, and for the next one, we actually have an industry alt. Personally, I don't do any of this. It's something I just honestly just don't know a lot about. And again, it's one of those things that takes a lot of upfront time and skilling and education to get it down. But industry is covering like basically manufacturing, research, invention, things like that. This is actually a really, really good way for your alt accounts because this is stuff that's running while you're even logged off. So it's not one of those things where you have to multi-box a lot of accounts at the same time to really get the full benefit. This one is actually running like while you're logged off. So a lot of these things you can actually just log into your characters once or twice or 3 times a month, refresh the research, be up to date with your inventions, fix your manufacturing, build ships, things like that. So you have to log in much less frequently. It's a really good way to make ISK on the side as well. And there's tons of videos on how to make the most use of industry and how to make the most ISK and what to build, things like that. I'm not that guy, but just letting you know, industry is a good way to make a lot of ISK on the side with your alt accounts. And for this next one, actually goes really well with a lot of the other ones I mentioned, which is a hauling alt. So if you do have a main account, or you do have other accounts that are buying really large quantities of things to help manufacture, or you do have a main account that does a lot of mission running and they always gather up all the loot, and so they always have a big hoard of loot that they need to send to a major trade hub, hauling alt is amazing for that. I also will argue a hauling alt is probably the next best semi-AFK alt you can have, other than maybe like a miner or maybe like a trade and market alt, because if you are hauling some really inexpensive stuff and you stay mostly in high sec, you can pretty much be pretty safe hauling stuff from A to B and running contracts and things like that. So you can definitely be on your main account running missions or doing other stuff, and all you need to do is basically just jump from gate to gate in a hauler. But if you are hauling things, say north of like 300 million or maybe like 200 million, you should be a bit safer and pay more attention, because that is in the range of where some people might gank you in that instance. And last but not least, I didn't know how to mention this one, and this is of course for the kind of like the simple roles that your alt account could fill, which is basically just filling different combat roles. So different ships, weapon skills, things like that, because I can already tell there's going to be people in the comments below saying, hey, what about Logi alts or Dictor alts? You know, that list can kind of go on forever, so I wanted to make kind of one large subtopic covering all of that. And this includes pirate faction ships, or if you want to get into certain weapon specializations, so you know, large heavy missiles versus large hybrid turrets, things like that, because all that stuff takes time. And just like anything in EVE Online, everything is time gated. So if you want to try a whole bunch of different ships and different weapon types, you're honestly better off making different alt accounts that can go towards those specific types of ship skills or different weapon skills. So that way you can fly different diversity of ships much quicker in a shorter amount of time. And we'll even say that involves Weber alts as well. So for some of you haulers out there, I know it's not a combat thing, but for some of you Weber alts, it's not needed for freighters, but having a Weber alt is very beneficial if you're a hauling alt. So I probably should have mentioned that before. All right, and now for some of my favorite combos, and this basically just means what are 2 roles or 3 roles that seem to fit very well together in one alt account or multiple alt accounts. So in this case, basically like a scout and an explorer. Originally, my alt account was just a scout, just going ahead. I skilled pretty heavily into making my ship very quick, but I also started skilling into being able to cloak my ship. So eventually, I got to the point where I could fly in a Astero. I was doing a lot of exploration in that, so I made a ton of ISK doing that as well. Another one is hauling, and to be honest, hauling goes along with anything because you're always going to have to move stuff around eventually, but I think it works best as a market trading alt, because being able to buy a lot of things in one area and move it to another major trade hub, there is a ton of ISK to be made there, and so you can actually get some really good returns doing that. And the next one, if let's say if you value the in-game ISK more than your time, obviously mining is a great way to kind of fund your industry machine. So again, if you have a lot of alt accounts mining and being able to harvest the ore and the minerals yourself and not have to buy it through the market, that's a great way to kind of fund your industry as well. And this next one is kind of a sleeper thing, and I know people aren't making alt accounts for this, but basically it's project discovery and doing like mining and hauling. When I was doing hauling on my main account and I was using my alt account as a scout, I was actually doing project discovery in between gates, and if you're actually quick enough, you can actually kind of maximize your time doing project discovery, and it's a really easy way to make easily millions of ISK, like in the teens, each and every day between all of your accounts. So if you do have some downtime, I know it can be brain numbing for the most part, but it's a great way to make some extra ISK no matter what you're doing. All right, and now we're finally in the home stretch, and now we're going to be talking about some of the more niche reasons, or let's say niche roles, that an alt account can fill. And these are typically for more veteran players, let's say, and some of these might be obvious to some, but not to others. But we'll go ahead and jump into it. And the first one is basically a non-wartime character. I know this isn't particularly a role, but it's definitely a reason why a lot of people actually make these alts in the first place, because obviously you're able to not do as much as you want on your main character that's at war. So a lot of them will make an alt account that are able to buy things, haul them from, let's say, Jita over to the station or the system that they are in that's at war, so they're less likely to be targeted, things like that. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not so specifically a role, but it's a reason why a lot of veteran characters make an alt account. And the next one is a Cyno alt. And to be honest, I've never even seen a Cyno. I don't know what it looks like. I know what it does, but it's not something I am ideally going to skill towards or probably be involved in anytime soon, because now we're talking about ships, black ops ships, we're talking about jump freighters, we're talking about capital size ships, all that stuff I'm not even close to skilling into or even remotely interested in. But it is absolutely required to have one of these if you are a jump freighter pilot and some of these other roles and things like that. So there is certain types of content in EVE Online that absolutely requires a second player or a second alt character alongside it. And the next one is basically having SP farming alts. And so what this means, skill point farming. So once your alt accounts get north of 5 million skill points, at that point you're actually able to extract skills into its skill ejector, and you're able to either sell them on the market or inject it into another character. And so I actually do this on all of my alt accounts. I love the fact that I can kind of pay for their own Omega through skill points, although right now the market can be a bit weird, so it's sometimes it actually costs you money, other times you're actually making very minimal profits. But I think just right now, just stocking up on skill injectors, which is what I'm doing right now, and selling them later down the road when they hopefully go up in price, is a really, really good deal. And sometimes I do inject my main. I like having the option of being able to have a lot of skill injectors available in case I do want to immediately be able to fly a certain type of ship or use a certain type of weapon sooner rather than later. All right, and my next one, it kind of rings back to what I said earlier about EVE Online being an open world sandbox, and trust is a big issue. So a lot of people will actually make an alt account, make a corp, and basically have, that is basically their corp wallet to mainly prevent scams, backstabbing, things like that. So even though, let's say your main character is running the head of the corporation and things like that, but not all the money is actually in that corp wallet. All of the money is actually in your alt accounts wallet. So that way it's much harder for you to get scammed or kind of get swindled a lot of your ISK, especially if you give certain people in your corporation certain privileges and they could actually take the money away. This is a really good way to basically keep yourself covered, as well as always have the ISK available to you in your corp. All right, and very, very last, but certainly not least, which is kind of goes both ways. So some people actually make alt characters for the sole purpose of selling them. And in case you guys didn't know, you're actually able to buy and sell characters in EVE Online, and it's 100% approved by CCP. They actually have a forum called the Character Bazaar, I believe. I will definitely put a link in the description as well as on the screen where you can find it. But there are lots of people selling alt accounts that have X amount of skill points in it with this kind of rep, and it has these kind of skills. So a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm selling a hauling alt that has 5.5 million skill points. How much are you willing to pay me for it? Things like that. And so this is actually, one, a good way to basically, if you feel like you have too many alts, you could definitely just sell them for ISK and have that ISK go to your main account. Or two, if you really don't want to wait around to, let's say, skill up a exploration alt or something like that, you can actually just buy one off of this bazaar and save yourself a ton of time. And obviously you're going to be paying a premium in ISK, but it's a really, really good place for people to obviously buy alt characters, but also too, some people just make a bunch of alpha characters. Eventually when they get up to the point of 5 million skill points, they just sell them on the bazaar. Obviously that takes an extremely long time to do, but it is another way to make some ISK on the side as well. All right, and that's pretty much it, guys. And I'm sure, actually 100% certain, I'm sure I definitely forgot some sort of roles that alt accounts can fill, but that's why you guys are here. So if you guys do have any roles or any kind of things that you think I might have overlooked, put them down in the comments below, because I would love to learn of some of the ways that you guys are utilizing your alt accounts, but more importantly, educating other players that are trying to entertain the idea of an alt account and what they should do with it as well. And I do have plans on making a video at some point of how to min-max your alt accounts, how to do SP farms, things like that, because in my opinion, there are 3 different types of alt accounts you can actually use in EVE Online, and picking which one is the best for you or having a variety of them could be very helpful. So again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys liked the video, and don't forget to fly safe.